It's Mimi Webb, and I wanted to invite you all into the studio to talk to some special guests from all different walks of life. Buckle up, because this is going to be the best gossip session of your life. So today we are joined here by Natasha Silverman, and Natasha is a relationship expert. And as you all know, I love writing a breakup song, so I feel like this one is going to be very important for me to learn about. So Natasha, how did you get into this line of work? What was the kind of the moment that you knew this is what you wanted to do with your life?
That's a really good question. So my background is actually in law. Wow. Totally different. I know, completely different. Wow. But for various reasons, I came to the conclusion that it wasn't going to make me happy. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm somebody who I'm a really emotional person. I'm empathetic. Yeah. I feel things deeply, and I knew that there was a way to use that in my daily life and in my daily work, and I wanted to find a way to. So I started training as a counsellor, just doing a basic kind of, counselling skills course, and I loved it, and I kept going. And at the same time, I was in my late 20s, not exactly having the most straightforward love life myself, because that's life. And I thought, God, I want to understand why I feel the way I feel. Yeah. I want to understand why other people respond the way they do. And so that got me interested in relationships. And so I trained as a relationship therapist and later a psychosexual therapist.
Wow.
I work on the NHS and in private practice.
Amazing.
Offering sex therapy. Lots of people don't know you can get sex therapy on the NHS, but you can.
Wow.
Yeah. And I love it. It's great.
Yeah.
I get so much out of it. It's so fulfilling and it's so interesting.
Yeah.
And we're all struggling in different ways. That's my main takeaway, that we're all struggling, often in silence.
Yeah.
And we need somebody to talk to. We need somebody to say, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's all right. That's normal.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like, I think not many people know even how the brain and the hormones work. I didn't really know too much about how that works when you fall in love, or like even the sexual, when that kind of kicks in, the sex drive. Like it really is interesting. And like you said, just to have that support there, or even as a couple, I guess couples can go as well to see you together, or?
Yes, I work with couples, I work with singles, I work with individuals. I think a big myth about therapy is that it's just for couples, like relationship therapy.
Yeah.
But actually I see a lot of single women who are trying to recover from heartbreak, who are trying to break cycles that they've been in for a long time. They want to know they can go into their next relationship and not repeat the same patterns. They want to know that they can choose a different kind of person that is aligned with their future and who they want to be.
Yeah. So, Natasha, what would you say your career and everything about relationships and sex and all that? What's kind of the inside information on all that?
So my main takeaway would be that relationships are really hard. Connection is really hard. Nobody teaches us how to do this. Yeah. And that's why we're all, often secretly really struggling quite a lot.
Yeah.
But there is help available, there's support available, there are different ways of doing things that we haven't necessarily seen or thought of.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think as well, growing up, for me in relationships, it's, as a kid at school, it was so easy because you just kind of like, oh, who's the best looking guy I can date in the year? There's always that kind of group of boys that you all kind of want to be with. And then when you actually go into the adulthood and into paying bills and, living in the city or something, it's really, really hard, isn't it, to date and also find someone that has, I guess when I was young, the whole ticking the box off of like all the kind of things that you want in someone, it really is a thing that you have to do, because it's, you never really know until, is it 6 months or something? I've heard that's when you really start to realise who someone is.
Yeah, which is why it's interesting. People often say don't go too quickly, don't move too fast with a new partner. Yeah. I'm not sure I believe that.
Oh, really?
I just think, for the reason you're describing, which is you don't really know somebody until you're existing together as a couple. Anyone can switch it on for the odd date or when you're going back to your mum and dad's house afterwards. But what happens when you're living together, when you're actually adults together? Who are they then?
Yeah, gosh. Yeah, because it is as well, like, I think you have to really figure out their past and history. Because also when I think of like when I've been in different relationships, I've been very different in every relationship, because you learn so much, don't you? And then you go into the next one and then you bring things that you've learned and the mistakes you might have made, you can, learn from it and do better the next time round. But yeah, what would you say on this is something I actually really wanted to ask you about. You know how people will say like a serial cheater or a kind of a cheating relationship, where they're like, someone would say they would do it in every relationship. What's your thoughts on that?
That's a really good question. And I do think it depends. I don't think it's necessarily helpful to diagnose or pathologise people based on, one episode of cheating or, a difficult interaction that maybe on a better day they would have handled differently. But if, it is the case that some people cheat chronically.
Yeah.
That is true. And that can be reflective of attachment styles. It can be that, perhaps the idea of a relationship sounds really good to some people, but when the pressure is on, when that commitment is in place, actually, depending on your attachment style, that can bring around a lot of claustrophobia. And so you can see people who sort of live with one foot out of a relationship because they know once I leave the honeymoon period and I commit and this is real, how intense, how exposing, how vulnerable am I going to feel?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because that was interesting what you mentioned on the attachment styles, because for me, I've definitely been in a relationship before where, things got quite, intense or maybe bad for me, and I really wanted to communicate that. I'm very much a communicator. For me, just being able to, in the moment, deal with it there and then is how I like to process it and deal with it. But I was with a guy at the time who just couldn't really deal with that and handle the conversation. And I think that was when I read into attachment styles when I went through that breakup, because I was like, I really wanted to figure out what I am. So I think I'm anxious. I mean, what would you say I'm not really that great at it all. It's probably better for you to explain.
Well, what I would say is that I think we've got an epidemic of women who are diagnosing themselves as having an anxious attachment when actually they're with somebody who is making them anxious.
Yes.
Who is behaving in a way that is not really in line with your boundaries in a relationship, your needs in a relationship. Maybe, they're just steamrolling over your desires and wishes and red lines. And it's normal to be anxious in a situation like that.
Yeah.
So, do be wary before diagnosing yourself as having an anxious attachment of who you're with and, are they doing something to make you feel uncomfortable? Yeah,
that's actually really true, because when I do look back, it's like they would make me feel like I wasn't wanted and I just wanted to be wanted. And I think you're so right. I think we then think, it's maybe us, but actually no, it's just wanting to be wanted as a woman.
And that's so hard. That's such a horrible way to feel, to want to be connected to someone and constantly be feeling that pushback, that distance.
Yeah.
It's rejecting.
Yeah.
And I guess attachment styles do kick in when, are you someone, exactly. Are you somebody who, when faced with the rejection from somebody or maybe unhealthy, toxic attachment behaviours, are you someone who would say, I've had enough of this, I'm out, I'm not going to keep trying this hard? Or are you going to say, let me prove to you why I'm enough, let me keep working at trying to get that, So if you're the kind of person who's willing to say, I'm done with this, I'm not putting up with it, then you're working towards a more secure attachment style. But sometimes you have to kind of get that bit a bit wrong so that next time you're more on it. You're able to kind of course correct a bit more quickly and no, I'm not going to tolerate that next time.
Yeah. Now, the last month for me, we were talking a bit about this outside before this little chat. And I just wanted to ask, like, what is the kind of dynamic between friends that go into relationships? We were talking about how that's kind of what I've had now is falling in love with your best friend. It's like you see it in the movies,
adorable.
It's really sweet and lovely, but so scary at the same time. And I've never even wrote a song about that yet. So I'm writing a song now about it for sure, but it's so scary. So what would you say is the kind of, not the common, I guess it is kind of, a common thing, but what would you say that kind of experience is?
I mean, it's incredibly powerful to form a relationship with somebody you're already friends with.
Yeah.
With somebody you already respect as a person outside of a romantic relational dynamic. I would say be careful of how you start to put romantic relationship templates onto your relationship with somebody who's been your friend for a long time. Part of the reason that, we get on so well with friends, but our partners drive us crazy, is because all of the expectations that come with being in a relationship.
Yeah.
Because when he's been your friend, he hasn't needed to get everything exactly right. He hasn't needed to pick up the milk if you've forgotten it. He hasn't needed to, remember this important thing in your diary necessarily. And, it's... So keeping in mind that the friendship is at the core of your dynamic rather than the expectations and the duty that comes along with being a partner. I think that would be my main piece of advice.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's what I think's really nice.
So a lot of that's already been done.
Yeah.
And he's representing a lot of stability and security.
Yeah.
The trust is already there because you've had years to build it.
Exactly, yeah.
That's so lovely.
Yeah, and even through his breakups that he's had and mine breakups, we've just always been there for one another throughout that. And I think it's nice because we've been there for each other and seen each other fall in love multiple times with other people. And I think that's a song that I want to write.
Did that hurt?
Because we'd never said anything to each other. There was never a conversation of, I feel this way, you feel this way kind of thing. It was just very much friends. So then when I saw that emotion come out of him, I was like, oh wait, okay, I think there is something going on here. But then fast forward another 3 years, now we're here. So it's taken a long time. There was always those small steps being made.
Both of you have experienced those moments when you think, oh, hang on,
yeah,
maybe I want to be in this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We both did, but we just never wanted to say anything because I think there's that fear, isn't there, of just not wanting to hurt one another or for it to go wrong, and then just I think, and also the families. There's a lot of people involved that you just wouldn't want to hurt. So. Yeah, it was a lot, but we got, I feel when I look back at it all really happened for a reason. And, I think also we didn't want to hurt anyone else that was in our lives. Obviously I dated his friend and the girlfriends I'd become, friendly with as well, because just through hanging out in groups and things like that. And none of us wanted to hurt we didn't want to hurt anyone, but we knew you've got to do what you've got to do for yourself and your happiness, haven't you, at the end of the day, when you feel that. And I think we've always said to each other, we've always been each other's, but we just didn't know when that was going to reveal itself to us. Yeah. So I think there's that thing as well of we have put that, that loyalty and that time into that friendship for so many years before any of these people came into our lives. So I feel there's that feeling of actually we owe it to our friendship and to ourselves to look into this and see what's there and give it a go. Yeah. So talks a lot about the relationships, but when it comes to the sex side of things, I think for me, I've had a relationship where that just wasn't really a thing in our relationship, and I realised that we weren't kind of meeting each other's needs within the kind of sexual bubble of life. So what would you, how does that work? Do you think that's a really important, especially in a marriage, I guess, as well? It's probably a really important part for me as well in my relationship now. It's very, it's important to make sure you have that connection, because I'm also very much touch. For me, touch is my love language. So is that, how does that kind of work within that kind of realm of things?
So much like relationships generally, it's important to know that sex will change throughout the duration of time together. So, often, this isn't breaking news, we know the honeymoon stage tends to be really different. Yeah. A lot more passion, a lot more fun, getting to know each other on another level. But then as things start to become more secure and stable and safe, that lack of, the knowing creeps in. Yeah. And it does start to feel less exciting, because you know it inside out, and we very quickly start to think, I know everything there is to know about my partner. Yeah. And it's maintaining that curiosity. Yeah. And making sure that you're still asking, what don't I know about you? Yeah. Tell me something you don't think I know. Yeah. Tell me a story from your childhood that I wasn't aware of. Yeah. Where do you want to be in 10 years? Keep asking questions. It's when we start to think we know them inside out emotionally, that sexually it can also really take a hit. Yeah. And also there are hormonal changes that happen and very natural changes that happen particularly for women. So we know the overwhelming majority of men have spontaneous desire, and that's when desire comes on like a light switch. They're ready to go.
Yeah.
Now, women often have that at the beginning of a relationship, for the first year to 18 months.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a coincidence, because around 18 months, often there's a lot more commitment happening. Maybe you're moving in with somebody, maybe you're getting your dog together, you know, who knows? But around 12 to 18 months, that's when women often leave spontaneous desire. They leave their partners behind there in heterosexual relationships, and they move into responsive desire. So that means they need the sexual cue to get them to that place of sexual interest.
So they basically need the first move to come from their partner.
Yeah, but sometimes their partner isn't going to do it for them. And women, I work a lot with loss of desire and desire discrepancy, which is where one person wants more and one person wants less. And it's important to know that that's really normal. You know, you're not always hungry at the same time as your partner. You're not always thirsty. You're not always in the mood for a hike or a film at the same time. Why would you always want to have sex at the same time as your partner? It just doesn't work that way. So again, normalising that and talking about, right, how do we actually help boost the sexual desire of somebody who's maybe slipping a little bit now? And prevent it going to the self-esteem of the partner who still does have the high sex drive.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, because as well, like, I guess it's to do as well with work schedules. You know, if you're tired and your partner's, you know, not as tired because they've just not been working as much. I guess it's like who can kind of, because I always had this saying of like, sometimes your partner can give 80%, you can only give, what's the rest of that? What's the rest? 100? I'm sorry.
By mathematics.
20%, you know, they can only give a certain amount, and then it's like you have to be able to balance it and switch it. Because it's interesting, because I've definitely had that the 12 to 18 months makes sense to me, because that's when around then is when I'm like the tiredness kicks in
as
more.
well, though. You're more safe around that time. You're starting to get to know them. It's more habitual. You know, you're in a longer term relationship. So how do we keep the magic alive in long term relationships?
Amazing.
That's the stuff of sex therapy.
Magic. Okay, well, when I come to 12, 18 months, I will get into that. I'll be with you to try and figure out how to get it going. So I wanted to ask you about red flags and green flags.
Oh, great.
So when I'm in interviews, I'm always asked like what a red flag is, and my responses are always very funny, kind of silly flags that I just kind of make up on the spot. But what would you say is a real red flag that you need to be watching out for in a relationship? Or a green flag?
Great question. So red flags are often quite subtle. They can start off, you know, can seem quite innocuous, just harmless, and then become reflective of a much bigger issue. So first of all, I think control. Controlling behaviours, whether that's trying to orchestrate your day, whether it's trying to influence control over the friends or family that you see, whether it's being irritated by, you know, how long you're out for, or, you know, if it involves certain people. Financial control is also a big thing.
Oh, wow,
so, you know, any symptoms of anything that looks like it could be reflective of a controlling relationship is really important. It happens slowly, and it can feel like someone's caring. You know, when someone pays a lot of attention to your life, it can feel like, oh, they really get me, they really know me. But slowly they might be taking a little bit of power and control away. So it's important to,
Scary, isn't it, when you think about that? Someone slowly creeping further and further into your life to take the controls and just, I've definitely had like someone in my life that tried to kind of just start to like not tell me the truth about what they did for their for a living, and even the financial stuff. Like there was things that were kind of little red flags that were kind of popping up. And then I think then the kind of mood swings kicked in, and I was like, okay, right, this is actually, I can see this person being very controlling. And I think it's scary, but it's like you said, it's as long as you get the warning signs and that instinct inside that goes, no, like be careful, this doesn't feel right. Then you can, you know, hopefully take control of it and put a stop to it.
and this is why people stop listening to their intuition. You know, your intuition is actually often really on the money. But we're taught and told that we're just being anxious.
Yeah.
And actually, if you can sense someone's pulling away, they're not being honest, they've got, you know, bizarre mood swings, they're irritated by, you know, when you're living your life and feeling really happy in it, you know, that there are some signs there that something's not okay. And it's important to hear your inner voice that's, you know, the alarms that's sounding.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm going to be coming to you for the sex therapy. I actually want to just go and listen and hear more about it because it's so interesting, and just to learn about how to keep Sir happy. Thank you so much, Natasha, for coming here today and to speak to us. You've been an amazing guest, and yeah, I think this is really interesting, and I'm going to rewatch this as well a few times because I think I need to take some notes properly.
You and everyone else.
Yeah, all of us together.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, thank you. That's it for anyone. Come back for more.